Hi friends, in this video I will be reading the next 4 chapters of our book, Magic Treehouse Christmas in Camelot. If you are following along at home, we are on chapter 5, which begins on page 33. And chapter 5 is called Rhymes of the Christmas Night. Now if you remember, we left off where Jack and Annie had gone to Camelot and they thought Morgan had sent for them, but Morgan said, no, I'm not even allowed to use my magic anymore. I don't know how the magic tree house came to you. Maybe it had a little bit of magic left in it. And then the Christmas Knight appeared and said that he wanted Jack and Annie to go and try to restore the joy and the magic in Camelot. All right. Then when everyone tried to say, no, they can't go, he cast a spell and everyone was frozen like stone statues. So frozen in time, like when we play the freeze game. So now it's just Jack and Annie left and everyone else is frozen. Okay, so let's see what's going to happen in Rhymes of the Christmas Night. Morgan, said Annie. Annie ran to the table. She touched Morgan's cheek and then quickly pulled back her hand. She's cold. She's cold as ice, said Annie. Tears filled up her eyes. Annie turned to the Christmas Knight in a fury. What did you do to Morgan? She asked. Bring her back. Do not fear, said the Christmas Knight. His voice was a little softer and kinder now. She will come back to life when you complete your quest. What? What exactly is our quest? Said Jack. You must journey to the other world, said the Christmas Knight. There you will find a cauldron. The cauldron is filled with water of memory and imagination. You must bring a cup of that water back to Camelot. If you fail, Camelot will never come back to life. Never. How do we do all that? Asked Annie, wiping her eyes. Remember these 3 rhymes, said the Christmas Knight. Wait, let me write these down, said Jack. His hands were trembling as he pulled out his notebook and pencil. He looked at the Christmas Knight. Okay, I'm ready, he said, gripping his pencil. It made him feel stronger, gripping his pencil. The knight's voice rang out from inside his helmet. Beyond the iron gate, the keepers of the cauldron wait. Jack wrote quickly down what the knight's words were. Okay, what's next? He asked. The Christmas Knight went on. 4 gifts you will need. The first from me, then a cup, a compass, and finally, a key. Cup, compass, key. Got it, said Jack. The Christmas Knight's voice boomed again. If you survive to complete your quest, the secret door lies to the west. Jack copied down the rhyme and then he looked at the knight. Anything else? He asked. Without a word, the knight pulled off his red cloak and dropped it on the floor. It fell silently in a heap at Jack and Annie's feet. The Christmas Knight snapped his horse's red reins and galloped out of the great hall. Chapter 6. A White Comet. Once the night was gone, the candles and torches in the great hall grew dimmer. A bitter chill crept over the room. What do these rhymes mean? Said Jack, looking at his notebook. Who are the keepers of the cauldron? What secret door? I don't know, said Annie. I just know that we have to save Morgan. She gathered the red cloak up in her arms. We've got our first gift, she said. Let's go. Wait, we should figure this out, said Jack. No, we should just go, said Annie. She turned and headed for the archway. Jack pushed his glasses into place and looked back at the round table, at the frozen king and queen, at the frozen knights, and at the frozen Morgan Le Fay. He loved Morgan. She was their great friend and teacher. If he and Annie did not go on their quest, Morgan's story and the stories of Camelot and all the stories about Magic Treehouse would end forever. Jack took a deep breath. He put his notebook into his backpack, and then he turned toward the archway. Annie, he said. She was gone. Annie, wait, he shouted. Wait! Jack ran to the great hall. Annie! I'm here, she said quietly. I'm waiting. She was standing at the end of the entrance hall, peering outside. How do we get to the other world? She asked. Maybe there's a treehouse that can take us there, said Jack. Come on. Together, Jack and Annie hurried through the inner courtyard of the castle and over the drawbridge. They ran over the frozen ground to the moonlit grove of trees. Together, Jack and Annie hurried through the inner courtyard of the castle and over the drawbridge. They ran over the frozen ground to the moonlit grove of trees. Clutching the red cloak, Annie started up the rope ladder, and Jack followed. They climbed inside the treehouse and sat on the floor. Annie picked up the royal invitation. "Close your eyes. I'll make a wish," she said. Jack closed his eyes. He was shivering from the cold. "I wish we could go to the other world," said Annie. The bare branches of the tree rattled in the wind. "I think it's working," whispered Annie. The wind stopped blowing. Jack opened his eyes. He and Annie looked out the window. The dark castle loomed against the sky. They were still in Camelot. It didn't work," said Jack, his teeth chattering. "Yes, it did," whispered Annie. "Look down." Standing below the treehouse was the biggest deer that Jack had ever seen. The deer was staring up at them with amber eyes. His huge antlers seemed to glow in the cold moonlight. Most amazing of all, the deer was completely white as new fallen snow. "A white stag," said Jack. Puffs of frosty air blew from the stag's nostrils. He stepped toward the treehouse and shook his giant head. "He comes to take us on our journey," said Annie. "People don't ride deer," said Jack. But Annie had already started down the rope ladder. Jack watched from the window as she walked to the stag and spoke softly. The stag knelt, and Annie climbed onto its back. "Come on," she called to Jack. "Bring the cloak." Okay, said Jack. He gathered up his heavy velvet cloak. Clutching it against his chest, he climbed down the rope ladder. He hurried over to Annie and the white stag. "Put on the cloak and climb on behind me," said Annie. Jack put the cloak on over his backpack, and he pulled it around his shoulders and buttoned it at the neck. As the cloak fell down around his body, the soft, smooth cloth made him feel warm and safe. "Ready?" said Annie. "Yeah," said Jack, and he climbed on the stag's back behind Annie. The white stag slowly stood up. Annie leaned forward, putting her arms around its neck. Jack leaned forward, too. He held on to Annie. The red velvet cloak draped over both of them, falling past their feet. The white stag stepped gracefully over the frozen grass. He walked through the outer gate of the castle. He blew out a puff of air and then broke into a leaping run. Jack held on tightly to Annie as the stag dashed across the frost-covered field. He jumped over hedgerows and stone walls. He bounded across icy streams. Annie's braids floated on the wind. The red cloak billowed behind them. Jack was amazed at how easy it was to ride on the stag's back. He felt calm and safe as the stag sped like a white comet through the wintry countryside. The stag ran past flocks of sheep and herds of goats asleep in the meadows. He ran past thatched huts and quiet stables. The stag ran on and on through the starry night. Jack saw a cloud-covered mountain range in the distance. When they came close to the craggy mountains, Jack was sure that the stag would stop, but he galloped on. Not even breaking his stride, he started up the rocky slope. The stag finally came to a halt at the edge of a steep cliff. In the windy swirl of fog and cloud, he knelt down to the ground, and Jack and Annie slid off of his back. The stag stood up. He stared down at them with his glowing amber eyes. "Thank you," said Annie. "Do you have to leave now?" The stag lowered his head and raised it again. He blew out a frosty puff of air, and then he leapt away, vanishing into the mist. "Bye," Annie said wistfully. She stared into the mist for a moment, then turned to Jack. "What do we do now?" "I don't know," said Jack. "Let's read the 3 rhymes again." He reached under the red cloak and pulled off his pack. He took out his notebook and started to read the first rhyme. "Beyond the iron gate—" "Jack!" interrupted Annie. "Look!" Jack looked up. The wind had blown away the fog. Beyond the cliff rose another mountain. A huge gate was built into its side. A pale light shone between the gate's thick iron bars. 2 knights in gold armor stood guard under flaming torches. "Oh, man," whispered Jack. "That's it. The iron gate," said Annie. "If we pass through the gate, we'll be in the other world." Chapter 7. A Good Trick. As the wind blew away more fog, Jack and Annie saw a drawbridge. It was made of thick wooden planks held together with iron bands. It stretched all the way from the edge of the cliff where they were standing to the iron gate. "Come on, let's go," said Annie. "Wait," said Jack. "What about the guards?" The 2 guards in gold armor stood perfectly still. Their huge spears gleamed in the torchlight. "I don't know," said Annie. "Read the second rhyme." Jack looked in his notebook and read aloud. "4 gifts you will need. The first from me, then a cup, a compass, and finally a key." "The first gift is the Christmas knight's cloak," said Annie. "Yeah, I guess it's supposed to help us somehow." He unbuttoned the cloak from around his neck. Then he held it out to get a good look at it. "Maybe it can make us invisible," said Annie. "That's nuts," said Jack. "Seriously," she said. "Cloaks sometimes do that in stories." "Well, it didn't make me invisible, did it?" said Jack. "Maybe you were wearing it wrong," said Annie. "Give it to me." "Oh, brother," said Jack. He handed the cloak to Annie. It flapped in the wind as she pulled it around her shoulders. "Can you see me?" she said. "Yes, Annie," said Jack, rolling his eyes. "I can see you." Jack looked back at the gate. Even if we get in past the guards, what then? He wondered. The other world swallowed up Camelot's best knights. King Arthur said it was filled with magic and monsters. "Jack, look at me now." Jack turned to Annie. She wasn't there. "Where are you?" he said, staring at the darkness. "Cool, it works!" "Where are you?" Jack said again, turning around. "Here!" Jack felt Annie touch his face. "Ah!" he said, jumping back. "It's me! I'm invisible!" "I pulled the hood over my head. That's the trick." Jack felt a chill run down his spine. "Oh, man," he whispered. "Watch, I'm going to take the hood off." In a flash, Annie was back. "Feels creepy to be invisible," she said. Jack was speechless. "The magic only happens when you wear the hood," said Annie. "Good trick, huh?" Yeah," said Jack. He shook his head. "This is just too weird." "Don't worry about it being weird. It's a great way to get past the guards," said Annie. "Plus, it's a way to hide in the other world. We don't know what we'll find there, right?" "Yeah, right," said Jack. "Okay." "Good," said Annie. "Now stand beside me and don't move." Jack put away his notebook. Annie threw the velvet cloak over his shoulders and backpack. "Great, it's big enough for both of us," she said. She carefully arranged the folds around them, and then she pulled the huge hood over both of their heads. Jack looked down. He couldn't see his body at all. He felt like he couldn't breathe. In a panic, he threw off the hood. "I hate that," he said. "I told you it's creepy," said Annie. "But if we don't wear it, we won't get past the guards." "Yeah, I know we won't have protection in the other world," said Jack. He took a deep breath. "Okay, let's do it." Annie pulled the hood up again. "I'll hold on to the hood so it won't blow off," she said. "You just think about getting across the bridge. Nothing else." "But I can't see my feet," said Jack. "You don't need to see your feet to walk," said Annie. "Come on, do it for Morgan." "Right," said Jack. He and Annie stepped onto the bridge. "Whatever you do, don't look down," said Annie. As they started over the bridge, the wind whistled around them. Jack couldn't help it. He looked down. Not only was his body missing, but the fog beneath the bridge was moving in a wild, spinning whirl. Jack felt dizzy and faint. He stopped. "Keep going," whispered Annie. Jack took a deep breath and looked straight ahead. Then he started walking again. He went slowly, step by step, toward the pale light beyond the bars of the gate. In the flickering torchlight, the guards looked like giants. As Jack and Annie slipped invisibly by them, Jack held his breath. "How will we open the gate?" he wondered. "Whoosh!" Annie said loudly. Jack's heart nearly stopped. Had Annie lost her mind? "What are you doing?" he whispered. "And the wind," whispered Annie back. "Whoosh!" Annie gave the gate a shove, and it swung open as if pushed by the wind. Jack looked back and saw the guards had turned in their direction. "Quick!" whispered Annie. She and Jack moved silently through the gate. "Whoosh!" said Annie. She pushed the gate back, and it shut with a clang. Through the bars, Jack saw the guard's face at the bridge again. "Good work," said Annie. "Thanks," she said. Jack and Annie then turned away from the gate. "Oh," whispered Annie. "The other world," whispered Jack. Chapter 8. The Other World. The other world was completely different from the dark, cold world Jack and Annie had just left behind. They were standing at the edge of a pale green meadow. The meadow was bathed in warm, rosy sunlight. 3 horses, one black, one brown, and one gray, were grazing nearby. On a hillside beyond the meadow, red and purple flowers sparkled like bright buttons. "It's so nice here," said Annie. "Yeah," said Jack. "Maybe we won't need this anymore." And he pulled the hood off the cloak of their heads. He was relieved to see Annie's face and to see himself. "What's the first rhyme again?" asked Annie. Jack took out his notebook and he found the first rhyme and read aloud. "Beyond the iron gate, the keepers of the cauldron wait." He looked around warily. "I wonder where the keepers of the cauldron are," he said. "What do you mean?" asked Annie. "We just sneaked past them, remember? Whoosh." "I don't know," said Jack. "The rhyme says beyond the iron gate. Those guards were standing in front of the gate. They weren't beyond it." "Shh," said Annie. "Listen." From over the hill came faint sounds of sweet, joyful music. "Maybe the keepers of the cauldron are playing the music," said Annie. "Maybe," said Jack. He listened for a moment and smiled. The music made him feel light and happy. "Let's go meet the keepers," said Annie. "Not so fast," said Jack. "Shouldn't we be invisible again, just in case?" "I guess so," said Annie, sighing. Jack pulled the hood of the cloak over their heads, and together they started walking invisibly across the soft meadow. They passed the 3 horses and climbed the flower-covered hill. At the top, they looked down. "Oh, man," said Jack. The hill sloped gently down into a misty green glade. In the middle of the glade, a band of musicians played flutes and pipes and drums and violins. Around the band, hundreds of dancers danced in a huge circle. "The keepers of the cauldron," said Annie. The dancers and musicians were smiling and laughing. They wore blue coats and green coats, white gowns and yellow gowns. They wore sparkling red slippers and hats with colored feathers. The dancers looked like people, except they all had glittering gold skin and wings that shimmered in the mist like spun silver. "They're beautiful," said Annie. "Yeah, they are," said Jack. "I don't think we need to be invisible with them," said Annie. "I think you're right," said Jack. He and Annie threw off the red cloak. They left it in the dewy grass and ran down the hillside to the winged dancers. The dancers paid no attention to them. They just kept going around and around in their joyous circle. "I feel like dancing with them," said Annie. "Me too," said Jack. It was strange. He was usually shy about dancing, but he wanted to join this dance more than anything. Jack pulled off his backpack. As he set it down, he saw 3 swords lying in the grass, but he didn't stop to wonder about them. The music was calling. The winged dancers broke their circle and welcomed Jack and Annie into their dance. Annie held Jack's right hand, and she grasped the slender golden hand of the dancer on his left. The dancer smiled down at him. Like the others, she was tall as a grown-up, but she didn't have any lines or wrinkles on her face. All the dancers looked very young, yet they seemed ancient at the same time. As Jack danced around in the circle, his heart leapt, his spirits soared. His glasses fell off, but he didn't care. He kept dancing. As he danced, everything in his mind became a blur. He forgot about Morgan and Camelot. He forgot about the quest for the water of memory and imagination. He forgot all of his fears and worries. "Jack, look!" cried Annie. Jack looked at her. "Hi!" he shouted, laughing. "No, don't look at me," she called. "Look there, across the circle." "I can't see," he said. "3 knights," Annie shouted. "3 knights dancing." "Great!" shouted Jack. "No, Jack, they look awful. They look sick," yelled Annie. She pulled away from the circle and tumbled back to the grass. "Jack," she called, "stop dancing." But Jack didn't want to stop. He wanted to dance to the wild music forever. Forever and ever and ever. We're going to stop there. Boys and girls, tomorrow we will read 9, 10, 11, and 12 and find out what's going to happen in the other world. See you again soon.